Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Mike Beer. Grade 1 stakes action at Gulfstream Park on Saturday. Race number 10 is at 1 1/8 on the turf. It's the Gulfstream Park Turf Handicap. $350,000 is the purse. Let's take a peek at this field, and Divisadero is going to be bet yet again. Yeah. We know that this horse, when he is right, is one of the better older turf horses in the country. Winner of the Turf Classic at Churchill Downs last year. Then he ran 5th in the Manhattan, in a very tough Manhattan, versus the likes of Flincher and Ironicus. Long layoff. He's had his share of physical problems throughout his career, but last time out in the Fort Lauderdale, Buff Bradley had to be very pleased that he was running a little bit at the end, and it's a nice prep for this spot.
Yeah, just strictly as a starting off point off of a very long layoff, he ran fine last time. There's no exception to take to it. He got out kicked at the end of that race, because to me he got basically into the same position that the 1-2 finishers did at the 8th pole, and they out kicked him to the wire. But maybe he just needed that race.
The problem with Divisadero is his running style. It always seems to put him behind the 8 ball as it pertains to pace and trip luck. Let's see what the Timeform US Pace Projector has in store for our likely favorite, and it has the 6 Divisadero rather close up to the pace, and I think that if Edgar Prado worked out that trip, the connections wouldn't be upset. I have a feeling he'll be a little bit further back.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think he'll be that close to the pace, but I think you're right. If he could get that position, they'd be fine with it.
The 2, the 4, and the 7 are the 3 horses expected to be up front. Let's talk about the 7, Airy, who in the first start for Todd Pletcher, the first start off a very long layoff, won an optional claimer on January the 6th over the number 1 War Correspondent. Airy had one of those good trips that didn't turn into a good trip. He was saving ground, and he got shuffled back all the way to last on the turn. He was very green with his lead changes in the stretch. That race, I don't like anybody coming out of that race. They were right there on the wire together, and I just thought, instead of it being 5 very good efforts, I don't want that race.
I agree with that. I like that this horse started to show some improvement finally, because he was not a very good horse in New York early on in his career. He was even back then, he was a very green horse. I like that he showed improvement, and I like that he was off of a pretty long layoff in that race too, so I'll give him a little extra credit for running that well off the layoff, but I don't like that race, Dan.
War Correspondent is, for the first time in his entire career, going to run 3 races in a row without a layoff line. Wow. It's a shame that this 7-year-old has been compromised by physical problems, because the connections always thought very highly of him. He was 3rd in this race, only beaten a length in 2015, but at the end of the day, he didn't change leads in that Airy race last time out. He'll probably work out a good trip under Tyler Gaffalione. I know he has it in him. The price will be right. I just don't think he's the same horse.
I agree with that. I don't really want him in here, but if you like him and you believe that Clement can get him, get one more big race out of him, he could probably beat this field. I still prefer him as a miler too. I don't know how much I like him going 1 1/8.
Beach Patrol was Hickory. As a 3-year-old, he was an okay 2-year-old as well. He's only finished off the board once in 10 lifetime starts for Chad Brown. It seems he shows up every time. He won the Grade 1 Secretariat. He just missed in the Hill Prince. He ran fine in the Hollywood Derby last time out. He'll likely be close to the pace and get yet another good trip. A lot of folks believe that, first-time 4-year-olds, he's coming into himself. He's going to run much improved than what he's 3-year-old form. I don't know if he's much better than what we saw in the Hollywood Derby.
Right, and he's going to have to be, too. He was a good 3-year-old, to be sure, but that wasn't the greatest crop of 3-year-old turf horses in the world. I always like, especially with turf horses, the 3-year-olds turning 4. I always like them and like to give them a chance to take a step forward. He'll have to do it here.
Flatline beat 3 of these horses last time out at 15-1 in the Grade 2 Fort Lauderdale Stakes. Joe Bravo gave him a beautiful ride.
He got a great trip and ride in that race, but he also ran in the stretch, because again, he was sort of in the same sort of position that the 2nd place finisher and the 3rd place finisher were in mid-stretch, and he out-finished them to the wire. This horse is in good form right now.
Do you think the 1 1/8 is a little bit far for Flatlined? I mean, he is in very good form right now. He's running. He loves Gulfstream. It's interesting, though, they've never really been interested in trying longer distances in the past.
That's a very good point. Not one that I consider, but I think that is something to keep an eye on to see if he really wants to go this far.
All Included has got a little bit of back class. He was 3rd in this race in 2016. Unfortunately, since that race, things haven't gone very well for All Included, so much so that Todd dropped him in for 62.5 last time out off of a long layoff. The winner of that race, Conquest Panthera, I think is a very promising horse that's running at Tampa Bay Downs on Saturday. And while Conquest Panthera got a beautiful ride and shot on through the rail, All Included, he took the overland route. It just looked like he had that horse in the stretch.
It looked like he had him, but you're right. If you reverse the trips, maybe you could argue that he wins. And he was off of a pretty long layoff there, so maybe they needed it. I think it's pretty confident placing for Todd to jump him right back up into this race, and as you point out, he ran really well in this race in 2016. I mean, he did not have a great trip in that race.
Let's take a look at our top selections for the 2017 Gulfstream Park Turf Handicap. You're going with the defending champion, Luke's Alley, who won this race last year at 5-1, and then just nothing seemed to go right. Little bit of an injury, came back in a synthetic race, take that with several grains of salt, and then the Fort Lauderdale last time out, he did not have a clean trip.
Yeah, he didn't. I'm just going to give him one more chance here to see if he can get back to the form that he was in when he won this race last year. And maybe he can't do it, because you're right, he missed a lot of time since then. So, you know, maybe he's just not going to be the same horse. But, I mean, that was just a prep last time. The trip really didn't work out for him. I wish he finished a little bit better in the stretch, but he did try to get through on the inside in the upper stretch. He got shut off and shuffled back. He lost position, and then he just didn't do any running after that. I think he can rebound in here. And now the thing that I like about him in here, Dan, is I like the longer distance for him. There are a lot of horses in here. I'm not so sure the mile and eighth moves them up. I think it moves him up.
Both of our top choices, 6-1 on the morning line. I know you liked Almanar last time out at 11-1. He just fell a neck shy to flatline. The key for Almanar is whether Joel Rosario can get him to relax. He can be his own worst enemy. He can be rank. He can be eager. He can be pulling in the early portion of his races. But this horse does have some ability, and the mile and an eighth is not going to be an issue for him. I also think he has a somewhat versatile running style where he doesn't have to be so far back.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about this horse. I think he's a big contender in this race. I just don't know if I want to bet him again after betting him last time. And really, at the end of the day, he didn't have any excuse not to win last time. He got out-kicked to the wire by a horse he has to face off against again. I still think he's good. I think he's a contender in here. I don't know what kind of price I'd be taking on him, though.
And maybe last time was the time for Almanar. I think I would take the 6-1. I really liked what I saw in that race and the race before. I'll take Almanar. Mike will take Luke's Alley, but it's really a fascinating race. You've got the new guard in Beach Patrol, the old guard with Divisadero and Luke's Alley and War Correspondent. It really should be a good show and a fantastic betting race. An approximate post time for the Gulfstream Park Turf is 4:34 Eastern, and we'll have all the live updated action on DRF Live at live.drf.com beginning Saturday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern. Best of luck.